I'm personally excited for the conversation today. This topic hits at the core of what so many 1P brands are navigating right now, how to balance this growth with profitability, how to make sure that the money you earn actually stays in your pocket, and which levers can actually drive meaningful growth for your business. Super excited to dive in. So I head up our North American partnership efforts here at ChannelEngine. I'm going to be the host and moderator today. And if you don't know who ChannelEngine is, for anyone that doesn't, we help brands and retailers connect, automate, and optimize their marketplace operations. So whether you're selling through Amazon Vendor 1P or Seller Central 3P or nearly any other marketplace on the planet, we help you sell profitably. So you can think of traditional marketplaces like Amazon, Walmart, Target, many others, also social commerce, TikTok Shop, fast fashion, Shein, and emerging AI sales channels like ChatGPT and others that are popping up. In total, we connect to more than 1,300 marketplaces and channels worldwide and allow customers to connect through one single integration for all their e-commerce flows. That ranges from product information management, pricing, through to inventory and order flow as well. So I'm joined by three fantastic experts who live and breathe these topics of 1P profitability every single day. So we've got Hilary from Jungle Scout, Greg from AMZ PhD, and last but not nearly the least, Bobby from ChannelEngine. So let me kick it over to you all for a quick round of introductions. So let's start with you, Hilary.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks, Matt. I'm so happy to be here. And apologies to anyone that was expecting Sam Johnson. He's our VP of Product and Tech, and he was on the docket for this. And then I'm stepping in as his last minute replacement. But I've been around Jungle Scout for a very, very long time. I've been in Jungle Scout for 6 years in total, with a brief stint away in the middle. And I really live and breathe retail data. I love retail trend data, which is why I found a really happy home here at Jungle Scout. And Greg, you're next in the grid here. I'll send it over to you.
Over to Greg.
Thanks, Hilary. Thank you so much. Yeah, I'm Greg Alexandrian, President CEO of AMZ PhD. We are your Amazon doctors. That's why I got to get up here, by the way, in case you're wondering. Anyway, been working with Amazon, both 1P, 3P, for over 15 years. We are a full service agency, so we do all the SEO and advertising and every bit of Amazon. That's about it. I'll kick it over to Bobby, keep it nice and short.
Thank you, Doctor. All right, I'm Bobby Pelican. I am the vendor lead in North America. Prior to that, I've been in the Amazon space about 5 years. Prior to joining ChannelEngine last year, I was the CEO of Retail Data Partners. We had developed the first vendor central tools in the marketplace many years ago, and we were acquired last year. And then I had a stint with Nielsen for 11 years. So I've been in the e-commerce and advertising space and Amazon space in total for a good about 15 years or so.
Awesome. Definitely a powerhouse panel. Let's dive in. So from an agenda standpoint, what we're going to cover today is key levers of profitability. So some areas that can really move the needle for 1P brands, from smarter innovation to better visibility and advertising. Then we're going to shift to recovery management. So how to tell if there is money being left on the table, how to potentially get it back. And from there, we're going to look at a couple of real customer case studies that bring some of these strategies together. And finally, we're going to wrap up with some live Q&A. So make sure you're dropping questions in the chat as we go. Levers of profitability. So when we think of why 1P, it offers this opportunity for high volume, low friction sales, at least in theory, right? That's provided you've got the right tools and structure in place. And a couple common themes that we see are better visibility, right? 1P listings offer higher rank in search results, customer trust, sold by Amazon, it's reliable, it's fast shipping, and hopefully, fingers crossed, a higher conversion, right? Shoppers are more likely to purchase from Amazon directly in that process. So when we talk about profitability, it comes down to pulling the right levers, understanding which areas of your business you can actually influence. You want to protect your market share while ultimately uncovering higher margin along the way. And We're going to look at a few of those key levers today, starting with how innovation and category insights can reveal some new opportunities that you may not be capturing just yet. So I would love to invite Hilary. Jungle Scout works with so many brands across Amazon. Can you walk us through what a performance scorecard is, how it helps vendors understand where they're winning, and even where they might be missing out on some margin opportunities?
Yeah, for sure. Thank you, Matt. Thanks for handing that over. For those who aren't familiar with Jungle Scout, so we've been doing this for almost 11 years. When you talk about like Amazon data, we were first to market. So Jungle Scout was the first of its kind in the space back in 2015, before, side hustling, launching your own business on Amazon, and before even major brands were talking about leveraging Amazon as a true growth channel. And now, as we all know, of course, Amazon makes up the vast majority of e-commerce sales and really is a proxy for the rest of the market. So what happens on Amazon really influences your other channels and influences what you do everywhere. That's why the brand health scorecard is a really important piece of what we do with the 1P and with the 1P brands that we work with. This scorecard covers a few key things. So you can see we kind of go from the foundational stuff, identifying and validating demand. And even if you're not using Jungle Scout, like even if you're not looking at our data, this is all of the data that you actually need to come up with a strong data foundation for the levers that you can pull for profitability. So when we look at how to identify and validate demand in your category, there are a few specific things you can look at. How is your revenue trending against the category? So how are you indexing yourself against the category, both in terms of revenue and in terms of unit growth? It doesn't just matter how much you're growing, it matters how much room there is to really grow overall, right? And that's why you really need to benchmark against the category. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about category insights and measuring against the category next. Also, ASP growth, like what is your pricing power within your category? This is something that's especially important as you're looking at innovation, right? Because if you're a 1P seller, you're working with Amazon on pricing directly, but you decide as you're growing your catalog how you're going to influence your pricing going forward and what you want your pricing power to be for those new products. As well, distribution. This is actually part of a new feature release that we just came up with and just launched this week, which is 3P sellers. Even if you're a 1P seller, you are not insulated against buy box losses. So you need to have a really strong distribution and compliance strategy to understand what your buy box losses are and what that's actually doing to your revenue as a whole, and how you can stamp that out, how you can actually find out who those sellers are, alert them to Amazon's brand registry, and just stamp out that leaky bucket of revenue loss from the beginning. And then the biggest thing that I'm going to talk about, probably my favorite of the pillars of profitability, is innovation. I think this is where the real creativity lies in the brand managers and in the product teams that we work with. These are the new products that you can launch, the revenue share for new products, not just for your own, but benchmarking against your competitors and how they're growing, what the breadth of assortment is. So what subcategories are you appearing in? What subcategories should you be appearing in? And then which subcategories are you growing the most in, to see that you can take a bigger part of the market share and protect a larger part of that market share. As well, what are some other things that you can do from a marketing standpoint, right? So your listing quality, how you're describing your products and how you can appear. And that's where we kind of get into the conversion funnel. So the foundation is really identifying and validating demand, and then the conversion funnel, this is what's really important for sustainable profitability, right? It's not enough to look at, hey, my CPCs are good and my ROAS is great, if you're not actually making a meaningful difference in your market share as a whole and in your position in the market as a whole. So we've actually launched this new conversion funnel that really takes you from like a granular view to more of a bird's eye view of how you're performing in any of your given segments or subcategories. It looks at, total search impressions, total PDP views, what the buy box wins are for you once people get to your listing, and then of course how many orders you're ultimately fulfilling as a part of that. And all of these are levers all in one that help you become more profitable and create more sustainable profits as you go. And I'm going to show on the next slide here. There we go. I found the arrow to advance it. What a better idea of looking at category performance, just a better look at category performance against your own performance and what this really means. I know this is a slide deck, so some of this is like really, really granular. So I'm going to show you some of these things in here and what they mean. But one of the key things to look at, of course, as I kick this off with is, are you performing ahead of or behind your category? So you actually need to look at what category percentage growth is and seeing if you're in line with it. If the category is growing 4% and you're declining 4%, that's a problem, right? You are not aligning with the consumer demand, and that's a problem, right? That's eating into your profitability, whether you're losing to competitors, maybe you're overspending on advertising and not appearing for the right keywords. There's just a ton of reasons that you need to, a ton of different reasons it could be, and all of those things you need to diagnose to actually perform better than or on pace with your category growth. You also need to look at dynamics within the category. So are there new ASINs entering the category or subcategory? As we know, there are many layers to subcategories. I think a category like health and household has like 2,000 subcategories in it, and then those subcategories tree out and branch out into other subcategories, right? So you need to decide what the area is that matters the most to you, and within that, what are new products that are entering it? Are there new brands entering the market that are capturing market share? We often see this a lot with what we would call like 3P disruptors, these like agile new brands that are coming in with really competitive pricing strategies. They are undercutting on price. They are coming in and disrupting the market, potentially taking market share away from you. And then of course ASPs. What are the pricing trends looking like in your market as well? And you can see here in this middle graph, this really looks at the share of revenue at the parent category level. And then these numbers here on the side is like the growth trends within those subcategories. So this helps you with your innovation piece, right? How are adjacent categories performing? If your category is starting to underperform, so you don't think you can reliably glean profits from that category over the long term, are there other areas for growth? Can you expand into an adjacent subcategory with your brand? Is that in line with your brand? And what is the revenue potential there? And that really gets us to the next topic of innovation. So what are these innovations?
Before we go on, I'd love to pull Bobby and Greg back in here, because these guys are talking to customers every single day. I think maybe to Greg, could you see some of these category insights or this scorecard being helpful, speaking to customers, walking them through some of these things, and how could you kind of see them in practice?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I know that I've done such things with some of my clients too before, where a client that had sort of RV parts, we looked at adjacent categories, and lo and behold, figured out that, oh, well, they have something that they could fit into that category. They went out and manufactured it and ended up getting some really good sales from it. So yeah, I mean, seeing some of those adjacent categories is amazing. And knowing, where you're performing, like what Hilary said, if you're performing 4% behind and everyone else is 4% ahead, you definitely have a problem there. So it's nice to have that insight for sure.
Yeah, I know we're going to chat a little bit later about what you can maybe do to get back to your competitors, if not surpass them. But I did think it was interesting that, Jungle Scout has these tools available, and it seems like it just kind of makes it pretty easy to find, pretty darn easy to find, which is fantastic. And then I know we're going to go to the innovation piece, which Hilary, you're super excited about, and we'd love to hear a little bit more about.
Yeah, for sure. So this topic, I'm sure even people in the audience are rolling their eyes because they read the word protein on the screen. If you're like a person who lives anywhere except for under a rock, maybe even under a rock, you've heard that you have to consume more protein. I know I'm often getting eye rolls from my husband about my lunch, because it's usually quite sparse on the protein front. And Amazon data is telling me much the same thing. So I pulled this case study from our data looking at protein, and then looking at what those what the innovation opportunities are, and then some examples of folks who are taking those innovation opportunities and running, and then also areas for white space, like white space growth. A good example is you can see here over the past 2 years, protein has searches for protein have increased, right? In 2024, we're looking at like 80 to 90K like average weekly searches, and then coming into this year, like we're looking at like a 30%, sometimes 40% higher amount, right? Like the peaks on things like Prime Day and Black Friday are always higher, of course, but the peaks this year are higher for protein than years prior. And then also you see this almost like, it kind of looks like a hockey stick kicking off the start of the year, which is no surprise for supplements. Of course, January rolls around and everybody wants to hit the gym and eat more protein, but searches for protein candy start going up. So you can see there's a lot of opportunity for a pretty like typical product, but packaged in a very non-typical way.
Mm-hmm.
So in this last year, 3,000 new ASINs have entered the health and household and grocery and gourmet food category that are associated with the protein segment. So they have protein in their product title. They are packaged as a protein product. The 3 biggest market share gainers in this segment also launched the highest number of new products. And this is like profitability one-on-one, right? It's like you can become more profitable if you launch more products that customers are going to want to buy at more favorable price points that are going to earn more revenue for your business. And some of those big revenue share gainers, like weird products, right? Not just your typical protein powders or your protein shakes. We have products like nuts, granola, jerky, pre-made drinks, candy, as I've already highlighted, which I may have to add to my lunch, which sounds like
So
more
funny.
fun. I know when we were going through the draft of this, everyone's like, protein candy, what is that?
It's fascinating. It's really fascinating.
On the call. One last thing before I hand it back to Matt to direct us onward is really just how much this has disrupted the protein bar category. We've actually done a lot of case studies and worked with customers in the protein bar category, and you can see the 2 biggest disruptors there are just one straight up like protein to calorie ratio. The David bar, which people might have heard of, it's famous for having the most favorable protein to calorie ratio. I think it's 150 calories for 28 grams of protein, which sounds pretty good. Don't know how it tastes, but it is far and away.
I might have a couple in my in my house, so they taste good enough, is what I'll say.
Okay, well, we'll have to dive into that on our debrief after this, but they're one of the biggest disruptors in this space as well. In line with protein candy, one of the other biggest market share gainers is Bear Bells. They're famous for actually creating protein bars that taste good and satisfy sweet cravings, and they are just eating up market share because they're so innovative with the flavors and how they're packaging products. So there's a ton of growth opportunity, not just in this space, but by leveraging data to uncover new innovation opportunities to grow your business.
I think that's where you get to kind of be creative a little bit too, right? And I have to imagine, Greg, you've guided some folks to maybe not protein candy for Halloween, but other kind of pockets of interesting areas, and maybe we use this as an opportunity to segue into kind of visibility, right? So you've got the right keywords, you've got this wonderful amount of new data at your fingertips. Like, what can you actually do with it? How can you take that and be actionable? Even if you have the best products in the world, if shoppers aren't finding you, you're going to leave money on the table. So I'd love, Greg, your take on, visibility is kind of the name of the game here. It's not just about throwing money at ads. Tell us more.
Yeah, well, I mean, it starts with the SEO, right? The search engine optimization. You want to make sure you have your products optimized, because those words that you have built into your products are going to go hand in hand with the advertising and help the efficiency of the advertising. And that's really what's key with the advertising, is to be able to drive that visibility, drive that traffic, but at an efficient rate. And I think that's where a lot of companies kind of fall short. They go out and just sort of automate things and let it go, and don't touch it, and don't do some of the other things that really need to be done, like negating keywords that just are not relevant and are not working, for example. And using the right mix of advertising. There's various different kinds. There's the sponsored product, sponsored brand, sponsored display, and you have to use the right mix. Sponsored products is going to be your real hard worker. And then there's, are you using manual keywords? Are you doing automated? And again, you have to have the right mix of that as well. But the other thing that's really fascinating that we've run into is we take over from a lot of other agencies in terms of advertising, and we're finding that a lot of the other agencies are using AI for their ads. And there's a big downside to the AI part. I mean, automation's great, but AI, just strictly AI, I don't believe in it. I've seen what it does. So like we took over for a major shoe company. Their other agency had, and I'm not exaggerating this number, 55,000 ads running. 55,000.
I was a witness. I saw. Yes.
Yeah. They were generating, $175,000 a month from the ads. We took over, and within a month, had them generating over $500,000 from the ads. Oh, and by the way, and the ACoS for the other agency was 20%. We dropped it down to 14%, and we're now at 12% ACoS. But one of the big misses there was, sadly, the AI could only sort of start from scratch. It couldn't take what was already there and build upon it or make it better, which is what we did. We went back and looked, and I found this one ad in particular that looked like it had a lot of potential. Lo and behold, that ad started generating over $100,000 of sales a month. They had it turned off because they couldn't manage it with the AI. So it's just, AI is like the biggest, latest thing. And yeah, sure, I use ChatGPT all the time. I love AI for certain things, but not necessarily for the ads. So, the thing is to try to, when you're advertising, a lot of people are always worried that the advertising is going to erode their bottom line, their margin, but you have to drive that top line. And then the key is to make it efficient. If you're keeping your ad spend efficient, then you're not going to erode your bottom line. Your bottom line is going to grow. I mean, that same company we're talking about, they were doing, it's on a 1P. Amazon was selling through less than $1 million a month with their product, somewhere around 800 usually. The very next month, they did over $1 million. And this month, as an example, in October, they're going to be hitting $1.5 million, which is what they did December of last year. So imagine hitting in October what you'd normally do in December, which is a big month. And it's all just
brand. Oh, I'm sorry, Greg. I was going to say that's an established brand. They've been around. The company's been around 90 years almost, and the brand 31. And they were really reluctant to spend any more on advertising. They just weren't seeing growth. Like Greg said, they were using an AI focus. Greg showed me the data. I saw that one ad. It had a couple dollars in sales, and then he turned it on. He saw the potential, and it literally, it's the first time I've seen an owner give an A+ review to an agency.
Yeah. Well, I always say that my job's to, make my clients smile. And that's really what it is. It's like they smile because they see what's going on with the sales. It's fun. I mean, they're like you said, Bobby, it is a very mature brand on Amazon too. And we actually achieved 40% growth year over year, which is unusual for a mature brand like that. But it's fun. That's why we do what we do. It's fun. It's fun to make people smile, and through those innovations, by the way, too. That's another innovation. Because Hilary, I love the innovation. I love your product and what it does and what it reveals too. It's very cool. But there's also innovation through advertising as well, and just making sure you have the right balance and the right efficiency.
Yeah, absolutely.
I love that you're kind of connecting the visibility and maybe some of that funnel view that Hilary was mentioning earlier back to now performance, right? These are real use cases where advertising plus that keyword strategy is being used as not only a sales driver, but also a profitability lever. So I think that's key here as we kind of continue the discussion. I think that there are also within that funnel, it's not just the return on ad spend isolation, right? Otherwise, you might be losing this ad battle, or you might win the ad battle to lose the profit war. And I think it sounds like there's some notion of that you would probably help these customers figure out Greg, on your journey, and then someone like a Jungle Scout could come in and validate that is, what you're doing is leading to this profitable growth. So I love.
Yeah, I think it goes hand in hand too, because you reveal, for example, are there products there that are not being advertised and that could use the advertising? Are there products that are outperforming other products on the advertising? Because that happens all the time, by the way. There's certain products, I call it the dating system on Amazon's advertising. Amazon gets to know the products, and it likes certain ones better than others for whatever reason. It could be the exact same product, exact same color, but in a different size. If it's a shoe, it could be the size 8, regardless of how well the size 8 sells itself. That size 8 shoe, the advertising, just loves that one for some reason. So it's pretty fascinating.
And Greg, we talked a lot about net PPM, having a high net PPM, and then how advertising can help negotiations and margins. I think it'd be great to talk a little bit about that. I know you've had a lot of negotiations with Amazon, and
no, great point. The advertising can help. Besides just growing your sales and things like that, it can help with some of the pain points that you have with Amazon. So, for example, net PPM. So Amazon's always looking at that. Like they want to make sure they're at a certain percentage. And guess what? If you look at your Vendor Central and you look at the where they have the agreements, you'll see a section that says guaranteed margin. Some of you may have already experienced that, where Amazon's asking for it. Others are going to be unpleasantly surprised if they come to you asking for it. But one way to help with that is I'll drive traffic to high net PPM ASINs. I'll go out and do the research, figure out which ASINs actually have a very high net PPM, and send traffic directly to those as a completely separate ad, just to increase those sales, because then it actually helps your overall net PPM. If you can drive those high net PPM ASINs, your overall net PPM will start growing and getting better. And then on the other side of the spectrum, we also look at unhealthy products. So products that are not selling through well, that are sitting there, and because Amazon looks at that too, and they're going to say, hey, these are not profitable for us because we're sitting on them. They start having to mark them down, etc. So we'll go after those as well and advertise those specifically to try to make those healthy again. And in fact, the algorithm will react to it pretty quickly. It's funny. Years ago, I had one of my buyers come to me and say, hey, we've got all these unhealthy products and we're considering asking for an RTV. I said, whoa, no, stop. Don't ask for an RTV. Don't say anything. Just give me 2 weeks and then revisit it. She says, okay, fine. So what I did is I went out and looked at those. That's where the whole unhealthy thing came from. I started advertising the heck out of those. She came back to me 2 weeks later. She says, I ran the report again. You don't have any unhealthy inventory anymore. I said, I knew that was going to happen. She's like, how do you do it? I said, I can't tell you. But it works. So I'm glad you brought that up, Bobby. Thank you. Yeah, there are certain strategies that, people think of pay-per-click only for driving sales but there's things that you can use the pay-per-click to help with other pain points as well.
And Greg may not be able to tell Amazon his tricks, but he would be able to tell you all. So feel free to ask him about them. And no, that story is a lot of fun, and kind of trying to build any sort of leverage as you go into those conversations with Amazon is absolutely something that is mission critical as you squeeze more, profit and from these conversations as well. So I know maybe a quick segue to another area, which is recovery management. So now, even if you've got optimized visibility, keywords, assortment, advertising in your favor, how do you protect the revenue that you've already earned? So this brings us over to something 1P sellers know all too well, right? Shortages, chargeback, co-op fees. Bobby, I know you've seen this firsthand, and Greg as well, with brands across many categories. So help us understand how large of an issue is this, and what is that opportunity for recovery?
Yeah, my favorite topic. So if you're not familiar with the recovery space, there's fees that you can dispute through Amazon. It could be shortages. So you ship 100 items to Amazon, they say they got 50. There's co-op fees, there's price discrepancies. They make it really difficult to dispute this. It's very time consuming and just really hard to track. So On average, it really depends on the organization. On average, though, we do see 1 to 5% of lost revenue towards these shortages and other fees. I have seen as high as 14%. To put it in perspective, we had a client recently, a pretty well-known gaming company. They do about 35 million on Amazon. They didn't think it was an issue. We did an audit. It ended up they had like almost $2.7 million in shortages. We got back about 2.4 million. So, it's a huge amount of money coming in. There's some clients that are.
Bobby, I think you need to say those numbers again, because those are so like crazy.
Say
those numbers again, because I'm listening to those numbers and I'm going, holy crap! I mean, seriously. So you recovered 2.4 million.
Yeah, in the course of the year. They started last like October.
And they didn't think they had a problem.
Not that big. Yeah. And I think that's like what we see time and time again. I think there's like 3 challenges. One is a lot of people don't know that there's a problem, right? I can't tell you how many times I've heard, we have somebody disputing, we have a finance team or a guy doing it or a lady doing it. And then I'm like, let's just do an audit. I always recommend, even if it's with a competitor, do an audit. You can go back 5 years for shortages, co-op fees is 2 years. So there's a lot of money, typically in that time frame. And time and time again, we'll see somebody say we're on top of it, and then they have $1 million in shortages or $500,000. And then there's some that are very small. It's thousands of dollars. So it definitely doesn't affect everybody. But even those ones with small amount, typically they're spending a lot of time. So they'll have a team, like a full-time job almost. And then some of the other mistakes.
I mean, I can tell you that one of my clients, they have a full-time person just to go work on Amazon. It's and so to your point, Bobby, when you said that they didn't know they had a problem, maybe they might just not have known, or here's what's going to happen. Of course, right? There's a CFO of a company, and they say, oh, you're talking to the CEO, and they say, well, do we have a problem with shortages or this or that? What's the CFO going to say? No, of course we don't have a problem, right? They're going to say, oh yeah, we probably have a problem, but we can't keep up with it, or so you discover it, and lo and behold, you help them out quite a bit.
Yeah, and I'd say over like the last year, a lot of people, a lot more people are aware of it. I think a few years ago, there was people like literally would ask, what is a shortage? And they weren't disputing anything, not knowing they had, hundreds of thousands of dollars or more that they can get back. And I think a few mistakes we see often is they only dispute once. So they just don't have the time to, follow up, dispute 2-3 times. Prior to this summer, when Amazon changed the process, when you'd have to do what was called a traditional dispute, that'd be like where you go to the menu, payments, dispute management. After 1 or 2 of those, they'd make you open a support case, and you were able to do that unlimited times. And we would see them deny it 4 times, and on the 5th try, they'd pay back. So it's pretty crazy. Now they are limited in it. They changed it to like this new form, but even then, you still can do it like 3 times. And what happens is they'll either deny it and then just move on to the next one, or they'll partially pay and the client's happy, not knowing they can dispute it again and get the rest back. So that is a big, I see that's a big, common mistake. And then we see often clients only dispute shortages that are like, say, $100 or more, because they just don't have the time, because that, for a $50 one, it takes just as much as it does for a $20,000 shortage. But those small ones add up to thousands and thousands of dollars, so it's, and it's just hard to see, in Vendor Central, you can't really just go back and say, okay, let's see for, this time frame, 5 years, how big these numbers are. So we always say it's something
impossible to see it yourself on Vendor Central. I mean, it really is.
Like 90-day increments.
It almost feels like the rules are changing fairly rapidly. The goalpost is moving on you, and you've got to have a specialist in your corner to help you. And I think this seems to be almost the other side of the formula from a profitability standpoint. If you're literally, you've got these dollars that are yours, and they should be in your account, but they're not, that's a huge problem. So I think after you've optimized those growth levers, innovation, visibility, it seems like recovery is a natural segue to protecting the profit that you should have and that you've already made. I know Greg and Bobby, you've worked on, it sounds like a couple of these. I think you had a real case study or example that you were going to walk everyone through. I'd love to hear more about it.
Yeah. And I think this is a really good one because this is a smaller brand that did about, they do 1.2 million roughly. Greg, I'll let you talk about it, but they were absolutely thrilled. I was getting emails when we got them back $5,000 and we ended up getting about 100,000. But yeah, Greg, I'll let you speak to it. Your team is the one that was using the tool to.
Yeah. My team was using the tool to sort of, submit all those requests to get back the chargebacks. And it was fantastic because quite honestly, that company, they do have a full-time person that just deals with Amazon and reconciling everything. And it was impossible for them to deal with, especially the chargebacks for shortages and things like that. It was just unsurmountable and just crazy. Anyone who's looked at the back end and seen, the shortage charges and then the reversals of the shortage charges, then another, it goes on and on and on. So their CFO, I've never heard her say anything so nice before. It was so funny. She normally has nothing but nasty stuff to say about Amazon. She hates Amazon, because it's like such a thorn in her side. But she's like, oh my God, she was like so happy with the tool, with what ChannelEngine was able to do to get them the recovery. And yeah, as much as it wasn't 2.4 million like the other one, it was still great. It's like, like you said, Matt, it's money that's yours and it's not in your pocket. It's not in your bank account. And now it is, right? And the tool just made it so easy to go ahead and look for that information first of all, and then ask for that money back, and you just keep going after it, and sure enough, it starts coming in. It was fantastic.
And they were way happier than the client with 2.something million.
It was kind of funny how that goes, right?
I mean, it was $100,000, right? It was like $100,000.
That's a salary. That's protein candy. That's
protein candy.
That's investment back into your advertising strategy.
Exactly.
So
and that's a great point, Matt. I think that's what you see a lot of clients do. This money goes right back into the business to grow the business.
Yeah.
And your point, the time saved is key too, right? Like just the time is money. And if you have somebody doing this work, that's the money's rightfully yours. You ship the goods, or it's a price discrepancy, or it's a co-op fee. The money is rightfully yours, and you're spending a full-time job or half-time, and they could be focused on strategy, growing the business, any other areas, and getting your money back. That's yours.
Yep. 100%. That was amazing. And by the way, I think we were able to go back even further at one point. Go back and look at 10 years ago. Who's going to do
We
that?
shouldn't say that, but yeah, we did see. Well, not 10. I think it was like we had some 6 and 7 here back, which
maybe I might be exaggerating on that.
Yeah, but it was. No, we had
clock, right?
like 6, 7 years back, which typically Amazon, it's 5 years for shortages, but and that's kind of
who's
changed.
going to ever look back that far, like manually in Vendor Central? No one, right? So I mean, it's just stuff that you can't humanly do that your tool does, which is fantastic.
I think another key takeaway there for me is that it's a ticking clock, right? So you can only go back so far in time. So the longer you delay, the more dollars you're actually leaving there, and you can't get back.
And that seems to be potentially changing. We actually had a call with Amazon and their dispute team, and they mentioned that in the U.S. they're trying to get more like 2 years, and
it makes sense. That makes sense. Like so it's good to know. I think this is the formula in a way in action, and more of a reason why you need to have a specialist or partner with somebody that knows these rules, knows these changes, and can win you back more faster. So those are I think some of the meaningful ways we're trying to help folks drive these measurable gains. I think before we move on to more of an open Q&A, I would love to go around the table for maybe one quick takeaway from each of us here. So what is the one thing that the audience can do today, right, this week, to start improving their 1P profitability? Maybe we'll kick it off with let's that same order that we had earlier. So we'll go Hilary, Greg to Bobby.
Yeah, for sure. Trying to summarize everything into one succinct thing, but I think if you're looking at innovation, now is the time to do it, right? You're not going to get anything out for Q4. It's already too late in the year, but next year you want to go into the year with an idea of what the white space is in your category and how you can tackle that. And that is going to be a really important piece of growing both within your subcategory and growing the revenue of your business. And there are so many different things that you need to look at. Keywords is a big one. Revenue growth for the existing products is another big one. Pricing power is another one. And lastly is expansion. So like who else is expanding there and how are they growing, right? You need to be able to thread that needle. And that is so important. You need data to do it, but you need innovation to continue delighting your customers and bring new shoppers to you. So that's my big takeaway, Greg.
Mine is advertising, advertising, advertising. Honestly, I think that's the number one lever to growing your business. I mean, who would have imagined that a very, very, very mature shoe business on Amazon that was already doing quite well in 1P could grow 40% year over year? I mean, that's unheard of. So, I mean, that's just one example, but it's from advertising. You know, is it partly SEO and things like that? Sure. But what's the main driver? It's the advertising, getting eyeballs on that product. The more eyeballs you have, efficient eyeballs, by the way, it's all about efficiency, right? You're not trying to drive, traffic there at a 40% ACoS or even a 20% ACoS. You want to be below that. You want to be very efficient. I mean, basically their acquisition cost is somewhere around $2. Yeah, that's the true cost for each person that goes and buys a shoe from them, basically, which is really very efficient. So advertising, advertising, advertising. Don't be afraid of it. Bobby.
Good. Yeah. I would say use experts. I think right now, Amazon, it's a challenge, right? It's hard to just go on and sell. There's some great resources out there. I'm an admin of the Vendor Central group on LinkedIn, for example, where there's tons of information shared. There's amazing people doing work like you with agencies and tools like Jungle Scout. I know those cost money, but at the end of the day, you guys are the experts. There's so many resources out there, whether it's free or a paid, service, but Amazon's a puzzle, and it's a big puzzle that's not very easy to solve. And I think unless you have that 15, 20 years experience like you all have, it's, I would say, take advantage of the experts out there and the great information.
Yeah, which includes you guys too, right? For example, we're experts at what we do and we know Amazon inside and out, but to try to get that recovery, it's not something that we could do by ourselves. You needed your tool in order to do that. So it's all about getting the experts and the right tools for the job you need to get done.
Yeah, and just like advertise, I come from Nielsen, so I'm passionate about advertising. I've seen how powerful it is, but advertising done right? Like you said, I saw those numbers with the agency our client was using, and they weren't growing, right? They weren't doing it right. So,
awesome.
It's fun when you jump in and make it happen.
Yeah. And that's, I think, some key themes from throughout today's discussion. I think some of these kind of small steps you can take can really lead to a pretty large impact. I want to now invite folks to questions. So you can drop them in the chat. Also, there are a couple of QR codes here. So the one on top there is to access Jungle Scout's latest innovation report. And then the one on the bottom is to sign up for a free audit, like Bobby was mentioning, through ChannelEngine to see how much money you could be leaving on the table. Let's go over to the chat and see if we've got any questions.
We're also launching a 1P playbook. That's going to be, I think we're launching that tomorrow. So check the ChannelEngine, either LinkedIn or our site or Jungle Scout. They're contributors as well. Greg, I think it's going to be some great content.
All right, we've got one. So is there a way to manage your ads in a way that means you don't run out too early in the day?
Yep. So there's a couple of things you can do with that. I mean, one is you could do day parting. You can use various different tools to day part, so you can figure out what time of the day you're spending too much and you're not being efficient, and sort of down tune those days. However, I think the best way is to make sure that you're running your ads at a very efficient rate, so that what you do is you just increase your budget, right? Because if you're at an efficiency that's right for you, why wouldn't you want to lean into it and spend even more, right? If let's say you want to be at a 10% ACoS and you're at a 10% ACoS, and you could spend, instead of 10,000, spend 100,000 at that same ACoS, why would you not want to? So I think it's just a matter of making sure your ad is running efficiently and then increasing your budget. However, if you're stuck with just a certain budget period and you can't go beyond that, you can use day parting techniques to limit the amount of spend during those inefficient hours of the day. And by the way, you can do it even by day, by the hour, by the day. Let's see, what was there? And
I think it's just me saying, don't be shy.
yeah. I thought there was another question coming in. I saw it out of the corner of my eye, but yeah, it was just you, Matt.
Just me. Yeah, maybe we'll wait 10, 15 more seconds, and it's okay if you have questions you'd like to ask in private. You know, you can find us all. We are going to send a follow-up email, and along with the recording, the QR codes as well, in case you didn't get a chance to scan them. And then I'll just give a quick and huge shout out and thank you to Hilary, Greg, and Bobby for the great insights, and obviously everyone who joined live. Yeah, so if there are no more questions, thanks again, everyone, and we'll hope to see you soon.
Awesome. Thanks, everyone.
Thank
Everybody,
you.
happy Halloween as well.
Yep.
Yeah.
Happy Halloween.